Here it is, April 29th, I think, today. Look at the snow. Half of it's already melted because it turned to rain. But that's Vermont. Okay, what I've been doing lately is I'm trying to get everything set up because I've got a plumber coming in to do all the final mechanicals in the utility room. So I had to change, this is the intake and the exhaust pipes for the heater. And I had it set up according to the booklet. The exhaust pipe, because it's a condensing heater, so you get condensation that'll drip out of the exhaust back into the heater. So the exhaust pipe has to be at a slope, has to slope back. I think it's half an inch or quarter inch slope down every foot. So I have to keep that, and also I'm trying to keep the intakes similar, even though I don't think it's as important with the intake of the air, with the condensation, as it is so much with the exhaust. So I had to change the intake pipe. I had to cut away some pieces that I had put in before. Let me climb back up here, because it was set up where it came down underneath the exhaust and then went back up. So there was kind of a large dip that everyone was afraid you might collect some condensation in. And so anyway, I changed this, which isn't easy retrofitting pipes when you've got to cut and re-glue and refit. So in here, this is where the intake and the exhaust pipes are going to go across the ceiling and then down into the heating unit. And in order to get, everything has to be so precise. It has to be lined up and angled. So in order to get the proper line from the ends of the pipes to where they're going to bend and then go into the heater, I put in a piece, and then I had the elbow on top so I can tell where the end of this elbow, and this is where the pipe would go in at this side. It's like 1.5 inches. So I marked that on the ceiling, the end of the actual pipe that's going to go in the elbow. And I also set up some pipes so that I could set this on top. It brings it up to the ceiling, and then I made a pencil mark to know that that's straight up from the heater. Now this piece here is the exact length. I've got it set up. This is where eventually this line, this is going to drop down to when it's glued in position. But I've got to get the right angles on gluing these. Before this one is glued in place, I have to get it lined up and then mark here and on here so I can line them up. Because once you get that glued and you squeeze it in place, it sits fast. So you've got to have everything exactly where it's going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'll glue an end in that pipe. These strings along the top, I had to figure out the line from each pipe and where it comes out on the other side. So I just tacked these lines up, made a few pencil marks. So I'm going to glue the pipe in that end, and then I'll glue everything will be marked so I can glue up the lines, and I'll glue this onto the piece that goes across, and I'll have it setting on here and in here so that I know it's the correct angle to fit across. And then once that's done, I'll lift it up. I have ceiling clamps that will hold it. And the top of this pipe has to be 5 inches from the ceiling, according to the slope. It's 3 inches up there, and so every foot, and this is about 8 feet, it has to drop a 1/4 inch. So it'd be another 2 inches, 5-inch clearance from the 3-inch clearance over there. And then this I'm going to leave unglued for now because the installation process, I believe you've got to dump water into the exhaust port because there's a water trap inside the unit before you attach the pipe glue in place. So that's what I'm trying to do now, get everything set up, and then I've got to hook up the blue water line. There's a couple of shutoff valves, one here and then one over where it comes up from the floor. Over there. Then there'll be a couple of elbows, and then the whole pipe is going to be inside that little channel above the wall and below the ceiling. And eventually there's going to be little doorway openings with, I've got some, whatever I did with it, oh, right here. I'm going to cut strips of this aluminum material so that you can get air through this opening up here. One other thing I wanted to mention, when I measured on the ceiling where the end of the pipe is going across is measured from, I attached this, see the clamp and the little piece up there, I attached that to the top so that I could stretch my tape measure, hook it on the end of it, and then stretch it across so that I can measure from the line up here how exactly long each pipe would be. All right, that's it. Back to work. All right, I hope this is recording. I just wanted to show what I've been doing. I'm getting all the plumbing stuff that needs to be done before the plumber comes in. So I had to attach the line from the well, and I've got a shut off here, and then there's a couple of elbows I had to install. And this water line is very stiff stuff. Here's a piece here. In order to get the fittings in, I had to soften up the ends with my heat gun and be careful not to melt it. And then mark where everything has to go with magic marker lines. And then once it's inserted and it cools down, then I put on a couple of stainless steel clamps at each joint. And then in the utility room where the line comes out, I put another shut off. And then this is going to be over here on this board where all the mechanicals will be attached, and it's going to be attached to this filter system, and then it'll go into the pressure tank and water into the electric hot water heater, and then it'll go into the radiant floor heat system. But I ended up finishing up the air intake and exhaust, and it's not glued in at the top here yet, in case he has to, because I think he has to add water to the system and has to be poured in from the top. And then I also had to redo the air intake pipe. I had to change it because it came down under the exhaust pipe and then went back up, and so I wanted to make it all even and slightly slanted back towards the heater. But what I'm doing now is, in order to get the plumbing done and attached to the sink, I've got to put in the countertop and then put the sink in place. This is the tile that I'm using on the top. The countertop has kind of a slate look. It's a ceramic tile, but it's a slate look to it. And I made a paper template because I have to cut out the cement board. That'll be glued and screwed down to the wooden surface. The wooden surface, I'm going to put a coat of paint over that before I put the cement board on. And in the template, I've marked places where there are screw nails or screw holes or screws underneath. So when I attach the cement board, I won't be hitting any screws or nails. And then once the cement board is in place, then the tiles will be glued down. And then the sink, once the tile is down, the sink will be put in. I want to attach the faucet before I put the sink in place. It's easier to bolt it on now than to reach up underneath the sink and do it later. And that way everything will be ready. Also, the floors in the upstairs bathroom, I've got to finish tiling where the shower and the toilet are going to be installed. So I'm going to try to get the plumber is going to do the mechanical hookups. I just want to make sure everything is done properly. It's really complicated stuff. And just to save time, I'd rather pay him if he wants to finish attaching, all the rest of the water lines to the tub. I've got to assemble the tub and the shower. And the less time I have to deal with that, the more time I'll have to do other things so I can get moved in as soon as possible. The bathroom sink, I also have to do the tile tops and then get the sink bolted in place. And I need to go through all because these are old sink and toilets. I want to put in all new mechanicals and anything, new gaskets that need to be done. I'd rather do it now and have to take everything apart because it's leaking and dripping later. Okay, my favorite words. It's going to be my epitaph someday. Back to work. Only I'm going to change it on my monument or tombstone, whatever I have. Instead of back to work, it's going to say back to worms. All right, the first thing that I'm doing with this countertop project is I'm painting the wood base, giving it a coat of paint, because this strand board is, oh, I'm going to lose this. My battery's dying. All right, let's try this again. Now my battery's charged. So the first thing I've done is I've painted the wood. This strand board is strong stuff, but it's like a sponge, and if it gets wet, it'll soak it right up. So I put paint. I'm going to put paint on it, and then I'm putting this. Um, this is building wrap tape. It's very tacky, and it's going to be a moisture barrier. I'm going to cover the whole top with it, and then the cement board will be glued on top of this, and I'm gonna glue it and screw it down in place with regular heavy duty glue rather than mortar or thin set. And then this is the tile that's going to go on top, and that I'm going to use thin set and trowel it on, butter the back of the tile, and then place them down, and then in between the joints I'm going to grout after with a darker gray grout. So this is what's happening right now, and I've also got to do the same thing on the other sinks in the downstairs bathroom here. I'm going to lift the sink out of the way, do the same thing, and then I've got tile that's going to go down. It's this mauve colored, which matches the color of the toilet and the sink. And then upstairs, going to do the same thing with the upstairs sink. And then I'm going to attach the kitchen sink once I get the tile down. That way when my plumber comes in to do the final hookup of all the mechanicals, we can hook up everything, the sinks, and run lines for the dishwasher that's going to go under there and everything else. Okay, now I've got to get to work. All right, progress on the countertop. I've got a couple of the cement backer board pieces cut out and in place. What I did is I made paper templates of the sizes, and then I marked where all the nail holes are underneath, and then I'm going to lay the templates over the cement board and mark where the screws need to go. These will eventually be taken off, glue put on, and then these screws, these are special backer board screws. They're self-tapping, you don't have to pre-drill anything, and they're self-countersink. They've got little notches built into it because they need to be put down countersunk to the level of the backer board. I'm gluing with the liquid nails, heavy-duty liquid nails, to the countertop, and I put on the moisture barrier tape, so the glue should adhere really well to that, rather than going through all the mess of thin set. There's no real need of that. And then once all the backer board is in, then I will cut the tiles. They're going to run this way, so there's a small edge that needs to be trimmed off. I think I can use my tile cutter. It should work because I'll be cutting 12-inch. My cutter only holds up to 20-inch, so if I have to cut the whole length, 24-inch, I'm going to have to do with a diamond blade and jigsaw, which is what I use to cut the backer board. I had a couple of different types. I got a blade that's designed for tile and stone, and I had it in my small circular saw, and it worked good, but it was slower than the diamond jigsaw blade and kicked up more dust. So I've just been cutting it with a jigsaw blade. And then you got to go back. I've marked a couple of places where I have to go back and trim a little bit, and so you have to make it fit, with a couple of extra cuts here and there. And then once that's in, then the sink will go in. And also, I'm not going to do grouting, typical grouting between the joints of these tiles, because the tiles are fit together very tightly. And I got some, it's right here. Yeah, this is a type of grouting sealant. It's a silicone based. But to get a bag of grouting for the amount that I have to do with these tops, the grouting was like $25 a bag. This was $18. But I think it'll seal it, because with the grouting, you have to go back and seal over the grouting anyway, so you got to spend more money on top of the extra cost of the grouting and the mess dealing with it. So that's how I'm going to do this, and it'll be a lot quicker, done quicker. Okay, back to work. All right, before I glue down and screw down the cement board, I laid the paper template back over it, and I had marked places where there were screw holes or nail holes underneath, so I knew where not to put a screw in. Then I poked holes where I wanted the screws to go, took a magic marker and made little spots so I know where to screw it down. So I got to take the paper off, take off the cement board, and then start gluing and screwing it back in place, and then get to working on the tiles. Alright, I've glued these two pieces, and now I'm working on gluing this one. So I just wiped everything down and run the glue, and then I'll place it back and then do the largest piece, and then I will put the screws to it. Alright, I've got all the tile pieces cut for the sink countertop. This stuff is not easy to cut either. You've got to be so careful. You'll cut and almost get to the end of your cut and then crack. So I've got plenty of extra pieces, when that does happen. And I've got a few different tools for cutting and ways of cutting. But I just finished the last piece, and I set the sink in to make sure everything sits in all right. Then I'm going to thin set it with a thin layer, because I don't want the tile to come up too far against the wood edge. Then once everything is glued in place, the seams, I've got such few seams and they are such thin that I'm going to grout it with this stuff instead of the traditional grout. It's cheaper and easier to apply really in a tiny spot like that. And then eventually there's going to be a backsplash of the same pieces along the whole counter. it's going to be tricky cutting around these outlet and switch boxes, but I've got plenty, so if they crack, I'll just use another one. One thing I did notice too is the tiles, I tried so hard to get the level exact with the wood edge. And the other cement board that I used at first was too thick. This cement board is better, but it's still, the wood is slightly higher. So when I do the thin set, I know it's going to raise it up slightly. But in order for the sink to fit flush, I had to do some fancy carving around the edge so that the sink could fit into it instead of on top of it. And then once the clamps are attached underneath, it'll bring everything down tight. And then there's going to be sealant around the edge of everything. All right, back to work. I just wanted to show my workshop I set up in the garage for the cement board and the tile cutting. I tried cutting it at first. I've got one of those manual cutters with a little cutting wheel, and you score it and break it, but it doesn't cut it, pardon the pun, the way it needs to be, as precise. And so I ended up, I've got a couple different tools. I've got this Dremel type of tool, and I have diamond cutting blades, which are great for cutting tile when you need to trim something or sand an edge that isn't quite smooth. Then I've got a diamond blade in my jigsaw if I need to cut around corners, but I try not to cut too many curves because that's when things split. And then I bought this water bath tile cutter, which works good. It's not top of the line, but it's not the starting machine either. And the problem you've got to be careful is, like if you're cutting across a piece that's a foot and you've measured, I draw it out with pencil mark. And when you get to the end of the piece, it's usually, as it's going through the saw, when it gets to the end, that's when the chance of it slightly moving and cracking happens. So I use the Dremel diamond blade thing, and I will cut a little score mark on the end, and then I run it through the saw slowly, and then when it gets to the end, usually it'll get all the way almost to the end and then crack, but it'll crack on the score line that I made. And then I can, if there's a little piece, I can smooth it out. The only trouble with this is, if you can see the cut edges here, they're not cut. Let's see here. Usually when you grout it, that'll fill in some of those little defects on the edge. Or use a marker to touch up the light gray spots and then grout it. But I don't have a whole lot of tile to do, so this will work. All right, now I got to get back to it. All right, I'm getting ready to glue down these tiles. This is the first one. I'm putting a very thin layer of thin set, and then I am using 1/8 inch grooves, and they're all going to go in the same direction. And then I just buttered the back very thinly also, and I'm going to glue it down. Back to it. Just wanted to get another shot of the tiles. I've only got a couple left for this cabinet top. So I've got this one with the thin set spread, and then I buttered the back of this tile. And again, I'm doing it thin because I don't want the tile to come up too high so it goes above the wood trim. And because it's not, tile on a floor, it's not getting a lot of weight and walking on, and it doesn't have to be set in a real thick base. All right, back to it. This is the upstairs bathroom countertop, and I am going to lose my battery here in a minute. That's the backsplash. I just have it set up there for now, but it's I haven't thin set glued on the tiles yet. I just wanted to get a shot before I do. And this is the downstairs sink. I've got the cement board in. I'm putting in the screws. What I decided to do is I'm countersinking the screw holes with this cement bit. These screws are supposed to countersink themselves, but they don't work so well. And if you force it in too much, you can crack it. I had that happen. So that's that. Oh, my battery is still holding up. All right, I went to the No King's March in Burlington on Saturday, and these are the signs that I made. I wanted to get some shots. They're actually recycled signs that I did 4 years ago for the Women's March. They're two-sided. They have these long ties I put on, and then the king lyre, and added some more text. And this is the other two, the long ties. They had a blow-up Statue of Liberty, a huge one, and I took some pictures in front of it with this sign. If you can see the text. And turn it around. Yeah, let's try this again. My battery died. This is the other poster. I modified these, like I said, from 4 years ago and updated it for the No King celebration. He's got the king lyre, Make America Grope Again, and I emphasized his baldness through his hair and googly eyes. One's bigger than the other, so it makes him look his typical craziness, and then his orange makeup and his tiny little hands and the big long tie made in China. All right, whoop, a fly is buzzing around here. Okay, now I got to show you what's going on. My plumber is here to do the final hookup in the mechanical room, and I'm glad he's doing it. It is a massive job. He's doing a great job. Brad Phillips is his name. A lot of guys don't want to be filmed while they're working, but he deserves a lot of credit. Look at that. We've got the electric hot water heater, sediment filter, pressure tank, and he is also going to do the installation of all the tub surround and faucets and showers, and I just have to get it prepped. I'm putting in cement board in between all the 2x4s before the shower inset goes in and glued in. That way it's glued to a larger surface rather than just to the studs like it shows in the installation book. I've got a piece already cut here of the cement board. And it fits in like that. And then I'm going to pre-drill and countersink some holes to screw this in place. But oh, it's been a heck of a job. Plus, I also had to, I forgot, but I had to put the sheetrock in and the vapor barrier behind the shower wall before this is all put in and sealed in place. I did anticipate doing this, so when I built this shower surround, I left a gap so that I could slide the sheetrock behind the 2x4s, but it still was hard to get in there and get everything cut precisely. So that's what I'm doing, and I've also got to do the upstairs shower. So I got to get myself back to work. But it's great that Brad is going to do this because, of course, I'll have to pay him extra to do it, but it gives me a lot more time to do many other things that are left to do before we move in. Okay, now back to work. Just wanted to get a shot of the tub surround. I cut and pre-drilled and pre-countersunk all the holes in this backer board, cement board, and I put in all these little furring strips, and they're put in like a 1/4 of an inch. That's the thickness of the cement board from the edge of the studs. So once it's installed, it's level across. So it gives more gluing space for the surround, tub surround, when it's put in, instead of just running glue along the edge of the studs like it said in the booklet. This will give more strength, won't be as flimsy, and more solid. I mean, if you're in the tub and you lean up against the wall, you don't want it to bend, pull up the glue from the studs, and it's just a better system. It takes longer to do, but so that's what I am doing. And then when I get this done, I've got to go upstairs and get things ready for the shower in the upstairs bathroom before the plumbing guys come back. And it is brutally hot today. It's in the mid-90s. I think it's the June 21st. And it is so beautiful inside the stone house. It's so nice because it's like a natural air conditioning. The footings from these heat retention walls, and then the outside stone walls, they pull up all the heat from like 6 feet below the surface in the winter, and in the summer they pull up cooling air, cooling temperatures. Yeah, stones are great, and of course the chimney, same thing. In the winter, you get a little heat source like the radiant floor tubes or the wood stoves, and these stones will absorb heat and radiate heat. So it's going to be very efficient. All right, I've got to get myself to work. Okay, I've got all the backer board installed around the inside of the tub enclosure, and it had to be recessed even with the studs so that it'll be more glue surface when we glue in the tub surround. The shower is coming out above the top of this, out of the wall, and then the wall is going to have ceramic tile. I've got a row, because I don't have enough of the pink or the salmon color to do everything. I have to use what I've got from all the salvaged colors and the amounts that I have. So I'm going to have a row going all the way around the top of the pink. Then below that, there's going to be a row of the blue, and that's going to come and meet the top of the shower. So the blue will go all the way around. And also, because I have enough blue and I don't of some of the other colors, the blue is going to be on the outside walls. And there's also going to be a pink stripe is going to follow through to the outside, and also a white stripe on the outside. And the white, of course, will match the white of the shower. So there'll be 2 rows of white above the pink all the way around. And to tie in the colors, there will be a row of, on the backsplash, there'll be a row of pink, well, 2 rows of pink on the bottom, and then a row of white, and then a row of blue on the top of the backsplash. So that'll tie into the shower, plus all the pink will match the sink and the toilet, the old antiques. And I do have rebuild kits I'm going to redo, take these apart and clean them out. And then one other thing, been laying in all the PEX pipe for everything. If I have time here before this runs out, I wanted to put a line out to the greenhouse, and I installed this PVC conduit, but it was at a 45-degree angle, but this pipe is kind of stiff, and the 3/4 pipe wouldn't go around the corner, and you can't kink the stuff. So I put some 1/2 inch, and the way I got it through without kinking it, I taped the ends, rubbed Vaseline on it, petroleum jelly, so it would be slippery, drilled a little hole, put some wire, fed the wire through so I could push on the outside, come in and pull, go out and push and pull, and I got the piece through finally without any kinks. All right. So I need to get to work, so back to work. Before the battery dies, I just wanted to update the upstairs shower. I am putting up gray board instead of cement board and backer board. Just it's easier to do it this way. And then there's going to be tile around the outside edge and above the top, and it's going to be the same tile that matches the sink and the backsplash on the sink, and it's going to be the same as the countertops downstairs. And then I have to put in the floor under before I put the pan in. So I have to glue in all these green tiles around the linoleum and then up through underneath. All right, now back to work.